Hello there, I'm Monica Reinagel, the Nutrition Diva, here with this week's quick and dirty tips for eating well and feeling fabulous. As autumn gets underway here in the Northern Hemisphere, I have 3 tips for transitioning out of summer and into the cooler weather. Now, for our many listeners from the Southern Hemisphere, I realize that it will be several months before you can put these tips into action. But in today's show notes, which are at nutritiondiva.quickanddirtytips.com, I've also included a link to a post on nutrition tips for springtime. But my first fall nutrition tip is to harvest your herbs. Fresh and dried herbs are a terrific way to add both flavor and nutrition to foods. Herbs tend to have much higher levels of antioxidants and other phytonutrients than other types of vegetables. So even though we tend to eat them in relatively small quantities, herbs can add a lot of nutrition to foods. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about the nutrition properties of herbs, I have another episode dedicated to that topic, and there's a link to that in the show notes. So if you grew fresh herbs in your garden this summer, or you can buy them at your local farmer's market, now is a great time to dry some to use throughout the winter. Herbs like thyme, oregano, marjoram, rosemary, dill, and tarragon all dry very well. Just tie them in small bundles and then hang them upside down in a cool, dark cupboard to dry. But look, if you stash them somewhere out of sight, put a reminder on your calendar to check on them after 5 or 6 days so you don't discover them next March. Now, as soon as they are dry enough that they'll crumble easily off the stems, you want to do so and then store them in airtight containers. Now, I already know some of you are going to be wondering whether nutrients are lost when those fresh herbs are dried, and some are lost when herbs are dried. But because they're so potent to begin with, dried herbs can still be a great source of antioxidants and other nutrients. If they still have aroma and flavor, they still have nutritional value. If, on the other hand, you have some herbs that have been hanging around in your spice cabinet for so long that you'd have a hard time telling what they were simply by the smell, it's probably time to toss those out. Herbs like basil, parsley, and cilantro lose almost all of their flavor when they're dried, so don't bother drying those herbs. For those, your best bet is to blend them up in your blender with a small bit of olive oil into a paste. If you like, you can go ahead and add grated cheese, garlic, and pine nuts or walnuts and make some pesto. But either way, you want to pour that stuff into ice cube trays and freeze it. And then you can pop out those frozen cubes and place them into labeled plastic bags. Over the winter, use these to add a burst of flavor to soups, stews, pastas, and vegetable dishes. Now, if some of your herbs in your garden have already gone to seed, you can harvest the seeds as well and use them either whole or ground. Cilantro seeds, for example, are better known as the spice coriander. And dill and fennel seeds are also highly aromatic and very useful in the kitchen. Fall nutrition tip number 2 is to become a soup ninja. Getting into the habit of making a big pot of soup every weekend is a great way to improve your nutrition all week long. Although they may require several hours to cook, soups usually require very little of your active time. And if you're using a pressure cooker or a slow cooker, they also need very little supervision while they're cooking. So you can be watching the game on TV or outside raking leaves or taking a nap. And then come dinner time, it's ready and waiting. You want to make enough so that you'll have enough leftovers to either take for lunch later this week or to freeze it for the future. You could make a hearty bean soup, a pureed root vegetable or winter squash soup, or an old-fashioned chicken and vegetable or chili. You could literally make a different soup every weekend for the rest of your life and never run out of recipes. And yet, the techniques involved in soup making are really very simple. Once you've mastered a couple of basic formulas, it's just variations on a theme. And if you're curious about how pressure cooking or slow cooking or just cooking in general affects the nutrients in your foods, these are all topics that you'll find in the archives. So why not start your soup habit this weekend? Go ahead and post your photos or any recipes that you'd like to share on the Nutrition Diva Facebook page. Before I share my third fall nutrition tip, thanks to our sponsor. Virtue Labs is a new hair care brand that's bringing science and beautiful hair together. One of their secret ingredients is a protein called alpha keratin 60Ku, which is identical to the keratin in your own hair. And that gives Virtue Labs hair products the power to change your hair's quality and appearance by resurfacing the strands and filling in cracks from damage, giving your hair more shine, more strength, and more life. You can only get alpha keratin 60Ku in Virtue Labs lines of shampoos, conditioners, and styling products. And in clinical testing, users found that frizziness was reduced by 67%, and their split ends were 95% repaired after just 5 applications. Want to try it? You can get 10% off and free shipping by using the code DIVA. Visit virtuelabs.com to place your order and then use the code DIVA to get 10% off and free shipping. And now here's fall nutrition tip number 3. Make a new fermented friend. You've heard me talk a lot before about the benefits of cultured and fermented foods. These probiotic foods help to promote the growth of helpful bacteria in your gut. Good gut bacteria can aid in digestion, nutrient absorption, and they can also help you maintain a healthy weight. But if yogurt is the only probiotic food in your repertoire, I'd like to challenge you to branch out. Kefir is another cultured dairy product with a slightly different mix of microorganisms. If you find you like it, it's also super easy to make kefir at home. Unlike making yogurt, which requires that you heat and then cool the milk and then hold it at a very specific temperature for several hours, making kefir is as easy as pouring milk over the kefir grains and leaving it on the counter overnight. Now, for those of you who don't do dairy products, there are also lots of fermented foods that are dairy-free. Miso, natto, and tempeh are all made from fermented soybeans. And that means that in addition to the beneficial bacteria they contain, they provide other health benefits that are specific to soy. And you'll find links to episodes on the health benefits of soy, as well as some ideas for ways to use natto and miso in our show notes today. And then there's the wild and wonderful world of fermented vegetables to explore. Unpasteurized, that means not canned, sauerkraut, and traditionally fermented pickles and other vegetables are great options. You'll usually find unpasteurized sauerkraut in the refrigerated section of your grocery. Often it's close to the fresh pork. Now, a good deli should have the kind of old-fashioned fermented pickles I'm talking about here. And with the growing popularity of fermented foods, it's getting easier and easier to find a variety of fermented and traditionally pickled vegetables which contain live and active cultures. Now, if you're lucky enough to live near an Asian grocery store, pick up some spicy kimchi to use as a condiment or a side dish. It also makes a delicious omelet filling. When you're cooking with any fermented food, you do want to keep the heating times as brief as possible so that you avoid killing off all of those beneficial bacteria before you eat them. And then finally, kombucha is a type of fermented tea that has gotten so popular that you'll now find it in virtually every grocery store, convenience store, even roadside rest stops. And this is something that's also possible to make at home. If you catch the fermenting bug, so to speak, the website culturesforhealth.com is a great resource for you. They sell supplies and equipment for fermenting all kinds of foods, along with lots of expert tips, recipes, and other suggestions for ensuring your success. So my 3 fall nutrition tips are to harvest those herbs, become a soup ninja, and to make a new fermented friend. That's it from me this week. If you have a nutrition question, I'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email at nutrition@quickanddirtytips.com or just go to Facebook and search for Nutrition Diva. Thanks for listening and have a great week.